And now, an anecdote to pad out my running time. Until recently, there's been relatively sparse uploads on this channel, this because I was exploring the great chasm of suffering eternally. Some of you get it. But the thing is, because of this, I had to pick my subjects, so I limited myself to only what I saw as relevant, which meant I developed a backlog of things which I still needed to talk about on this channel. Since I was last in the habit of frequently uploading videos, I've watched Steins Gate and Akira. Now I have plans to talk about Steins Gate next week, and Akira is just so influential I'll end up talking about it somehow. But I can't say the same for the Makoto Shinkai movie, Garden of Words, which I also watched. I feel I have to give this its own video. Now, I'm having trouble actually calling this a movie because it's only 40 minutes long, so I don't really analyze it as a movie, but more as a short film. Now, Makoto Shinkai is no stranger to making short films. For example, he made A Gathering of Cats, which I find hilarious. He made Voice of a Distant Star, which I'm yet to get around to watching. And he also made this one I'm showing now called Crossroads, which inspired him to go on and make a feature film, which I don't think I've mentioned on this channel. That film's name just happens to be
Your name.
Your Name. Your Name. Your Name. Your Name. Your Name is
Kimi no Nawa.
Yeah, with Shinkai also being the director of Your Name as well as the Garden of Words, I'm gonna make comparisons back to Your Name. But with the Garden of Words coming out before that movie, these are just observations on Shinkai more than they are Your Name. One of the main plot devices in the Garden of Words is rain. Now, I'm an expert in the field of rain considering I live in the UK, a country where it rains more often than I nor anyone else who isn't that guy from Midnight in Paris would deem necessary. Well, scratch that. Anyone who isn't that guy from Midnight in Paris or the protagonist of this movie, because he decides that every time it was raining in the morning, he would skip school's first period and stay in a park where he would draw designs for shoes. Yeah, one comparison I'm going to make between him and Taki from Your Name is they both have a very specific interest, with his being shoes and Taki's being architecture. The comparisons with Taki from Your Name continue as our protagonist, Takao, by the way, actually meets a female, except this one isn't a 16-year-old girl, but is in fact a 29-year-old woman, who's called Yukino and is played by Kana, my voice sounds like ASMR, Hanazawa. Yes, Hanazawa, not Hanezawa, like this video would have you believe. Yukino also happens to spend rainy mornings under the same shelter in the park. For a while, the two do not speak to each other until Yukino starts to recite some tanka poetry out of nowhere, which starts a relationship between the two. Because it's a little known fact that poetry is the fastest way to pull. I mean, if you just want to get with someone, go up to them in the park and say,
Didn't tell me. Didn't tell me what I wanna tell me.
and that is how you get all the waifus, although it has to be a poem by John Agard. They just don't dig Lord Alfred Tennyson. Unfunny excuses to use my green screen aside, the movie details their interactions and their dependency on each other. This movie makes it very clear that their meetings in the park are their safe haven from the outside world, where they talk about their interests, and Yukino offers Takao chocolate like a fucking nonce. As the story progresses, the two eventually have to come to terms with their relationship, that relationship being unassuming student and nonce. Nonce jokes aside, the characters are nothing special, and you won't find yourself crying based off character interaction alone. However, this is why I judge this as a short film instead of a movie, as the presentation is the driving force behind this, just like how most anime short films are not really where you'd go to see a good performance, but more so visual exquisiteness. Thankfully, Garden of Words flourishes in this area because Makoto Shinkai. As I said earlier, I live in a country where rain has become more of an inconvenience than it is a weather state, but that doesn't disguise from the fact that rain is incredibly pretty, especially when applied to urban environments, which Comics Wave Films takes full advantage of. I talk about how the animation looks even better than reality, but I'd just be wasting my breath. I mean, look at the work, it just speaks for itself. Another part of the movie that I want to draw attention to is the sound. Now, the soundtrack itself isn't all that special, but it's the placement of sound that's actually really interesting. I guess what I'm trying to draw attention to here is the sound design. Now, I never talk about sound design. I mean, even when I was talking about A Silent Voice, a movie which in retrospect has fantastic sound design, I didn't bring it up. The only time I've actively noticed sound design was this one clip from Lucky Star.
犬のしつけっていうか、ゲイのチンチンってどんな意味なんだろう
To be fair, it's hard not to notice something like that. Now, what this movie is very good at is the insertion of silence. When the two main characters are together, or if they're in a setting where they're thinking to themselves, there's no background music, only the sounds around them, which more often than not happens to be the rain. However, this is juxtaposed when there's a time skip. Music is played, which further reminds the audience of the connections between silence and plot importance, while also tying into one of Shinkai's recurring themes of time. And ultimately, time is why I would have to recommend this movie. It tells a touching story which, despite my nonce jokes, actually handles its subject matter with a surprising amount of maturity. Also, for a 50-minute running time, it brings up an interesting equivalent among other anime. Some of the greatest shows out there, like Steins Gate and Madoka Magica, take hours in order to get to the good bits. However, this movie satisfies you from start to finish in only about 50 minutes without letting up. It's only 50 minutes of your time, and I'd say time well spent. I mean, much more productive than spending 3 days just to say that a movie is good because Makoto Shinkai. Just cut to the credits now.